Welcome to this explainer. If you're the kind of person who loves unpacking the past, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're taking a focused journey through the crucible of America. We're going to explore 7 absolutely powerful true stories. We're talking conflict, innovation, tragedy, and these wild, unsolved mysteries that literally forged the United States we know today. Let's get right into it. So, what do a 30-second gunfight, a stolen baby, and an atomic bomb actually have in common? I mean, on the surface, absolutely nothing, right? But as we navigate through this, you're going to see that they all represent these pivotal moments of intense friction. They're these sudden, explosive collisions of cultures, technologies, and laws that shaped modern America. Section 1. Clashes on the Frontier, the violent struggle for the American West. Okay, so on one side, you have the post-Civil War U.S. Army, specifically Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer, whose whole strategy was about speed and extreme aggression to push westward expansion into the sacred Black Hills, even though there were treaties protecting that land. Then, on the other side, you have this united coalition of native defenders. We're talking Lakota, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho, led by brilliant, revered figures like Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. And their mission? It was absolute. They were defending their ancestral lands, their families, and their entire way of life. In the summer of 1876, at the Battle of Little Bighorn, these two immovable forces collided. Now, Custer, he was expecting a scattered village, so he actually divided his 7th Cavalry into separate battalions. Huge mistake. He severely underestimated their numbers. He walked right into thousands of people and a massive, highly coordinated defense. Warriors led by Crazy Horse rapidly shifted positions, using the ravines and the landscape completely to their advantage. Custer's forces were surrounded and just completely defeated. There were literally no U.S. military survivors from Custer's immediate command. And while this was a staggering victory for the tribal nations, the backlash was severe. It completely stunned the American public, and it triggered a massively intensified U.S. military campaign that ultimately forced those tribes onto reservations. All right, shifting gears from the open plains to the dusty, booming streets of Tombstone, Arizona in 1881. Here we see a totally different kind of frontier clash, lawmen versus cowboys. You've got City Marshal Virgil Earp, his brothers Wyatt and Morgan, and their friend Doc Holliday facing off against this loose group of ranchers known as the Cowboys, which included the Clanton and McClory brothers. Tensions had been boiling over cattle rustling and, interestingly enough, an illegal weapons ordinance right inside city limits. And the key to this whole legend, it really comes down to the number 30. When Virgil Earp stepped up to disarm the Cowboys near the OK Corral, the resulting gunfight, the legendary gunfight, lasted only 30 seconds. In that half a minute, roughly 30 shots were fired. When the smoke finally cleared, 3 cowboys lay dead and 3 lawmen were wounded. Wyatt Earp amazingly walked away without a single scratch. But this brief 30-second explosion of violence cemented a really complex legacy. It triggered the Earp Vendetta ride, and it forever symbolized that brutal struggle between order and chaos in the Wild West. Section 2. America's Darkest Mysteries, the Crimes That Terrified a Nation. I am a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. Yeah, that chilling message was actually written in a letter to the public in 1919 by a phantom killer known only as the Axeman of New Orleans. Between 1918 and 1919, this mysterious figure would just chisel through the back doors of Italian-American grocers in the dead of night, attacking them with their own axes. But here is the most bizarre detail. In that same letter, the Axeman promised to spare anyone in a home where jazz music was playing. So, on that designated night, the entire city just erupted in jazz. Dance halls were packed, people were dragging pianos into their living rooms, and no one was murdered that night. The killings eventually stopped just as suddenly as they began, and the Axeman completely vanished into history, still unidentified to this day. From that unsolved string of murders, we transition to a crime that really broke the heart of an entire nation. In 1932, aviator Charles Lindbergh was, without a doubt, America's greatest hero. He and his wife Anne were international superstars, but that fame turned into a literal living nightmare when their 20-month-old son, who the press called America's baby, was snatched directly from his second-story crib. The timeline of this tragedy unfolded with devastating speed. On March 1st, the baby was taken. The only clues left behind were some muddy footprints, a broken homemade ladder, and a ransom note. Over the following weeks, an intermediary met a man with a German accent who called himself John in a cemetery, handing over a $50,000 ransom. The whole nation prayed for the baby's safe return. But tragically, on May 12th, a truck driver discovered the child's badly decomposed body in the woods just a few miles from the Lindbergh home. By tracking the gold certificates used to pay that ransom, police eventually arrested and executed a German carpenter named Bruno Richard Hauptmann. Yet, because some of the evidence was so circumstantial, historians still debate whether he acted alone or if there's way more to the story. So the really crucial takeaway here is how this tragedy fundamentally altered the structure of American justice. The media frenzy was just intense and unprecedented, and it completely exposed the weaknesses of local policing when dealing with major high-stakes cases. This pressure directly pushed Congress to pass the Federal Kidnapping Act, which became known as the Lindbergh Law. And this was a massive game-changer. It gave federal authorities the power to cross state lines and track down kidnappers, which permanently changed how U.S. law enforcement operates. Section 3. The Scars of Injustice, Confronting Racial Violence. Black Wall Street. Back in the early 1920s, this was the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Despite facing severe segregation, Black Americans had built this incredibly thriving, wealthy community. We're talking luxury hotels, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs. It was this amazing beacon of determination. But racial tensions in the city were just boiling, and it all erupted in May of 1921 over a disputed incident in a downtown elevator between a 19-year-old black shoe shiner named Dick Rowland and a 17-year-old white elevator operator named Sarah Page. Almost immediately, sensationalized newspaper headlines stirred up an angry white mob. The scale of the violence that followed was simply devastating. When armed black veterans stepped up to protect Rowland from a potential lynching, a gunshot rang out, and that sparked an all-out assault on Greenwood. A white mob looted and burned 35 city blocks. Over 1,200 homes were completely destroyed. There were even reports of private planes flying overhead dropping incendiary devices. Up to 300 lives were lost. And you know what's truly shocking? Not a single person was convicted. This massive tragedy was deliberately ignored and basically erased from history books for decades until survivors and historians finally forced the truth out into the open. We see the same systemic racial violence again when we shift our timeline forward to 1955. Emmett Till, a cheerful 14-year-old boy from Chicago, traveled down to Money, Mississippi to visit family. He was completely unaccustomed to the strict, deadly rules of the segregated South. A perceived interaction at a grocery store with a white clerk named Carolyn Bryant sealed his fate. In the dead of night, 2 armed white men kidnapped Emmett, brutally beat him, and discarded his body in the Tallahatchie River. He could only be identified by a ring he was wearing that bore his father's initials. But out of this horrific injustice came a profound act of bravery by Mamie Till Mobley. Emmett's mother made the agonizing decision to hold an open casket funeral back in Chicago. She said she wanted the entire world to witness the undeniable, brutal reality of racial violence. And they did. Millions saw the photographs. Now, even though the killers were acquitted by an all-white jury after just an hour of deliberation, and then actually confessed later in a magazine, Mamie's courage ignited national outrage. Her decision helped launch the modern civil rights movement, profoundly altering the trajectory of American history. Section 4. Dawn of the Atomic Age, the secret that changed the world. This number right here really tells the story of the sheer scale. 130,000. That's the number of workers involved in the top-secret Manhattan Project. To beat Hitler to the atomic bomb, the U.S. government spent an astounding $2 billion to build entire secret cities from scratch, places like Oak Ridge, Hanford, and Los Alamos, just to enrich uranium and produce plutonium. It was this massive, sprawling operation led by General Leslie Groves, completely hidden from the public. In fact, a lot of the workers didn't even know what they were building. The brilliant physicists leading the scientific side of this, J. Robert Oppenheimer, truly realized the gravity of what they had achieved on July 16, 1945, out in the Alamogordo Desert. During the Trinity test, the world's first nuclear device exploded with a blinding flash, literally brighter than the sun, sending a massive mushroom cloud up into the sky. Witnessing this absolutely terrifying power, Oppenheimer recalled a chilling line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." This single scientific achievement built a deeply, deeply complex legacy. On the one hand, we have the immediate, unprecedented destruction. The bombs Little Boy and Fat Man decimated Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing tens of thousands of people instantly and forcing Japan's surrender, which effectively ended World War II. But on the other hand, we have the permanent consequences. This one invention immediately triggered the Cold War nuclear arms race, putting humanity under the constant shadow of self-destruction. But at the exact same time, it paved the way for peaceful innovations, like nuclear energy and advanced medical treatments. Section 5. The Weight of History. Remembering the Crucible. The American past is not just a single, clean, straight line. It's a deeply complex mix. We have these towering pillars of triumph and innovation, like the massive scientific leaps of the Manhattan Project. But then we have deep, sobering periods of tragedy and injustice, demanding that we remember the lost community of Greenwood and the immense courage of Mamie Till Mobley. And woven through it all, we have the compelling shadows of unsolved mysteries. From the Axeman to the Lindbergh kidnapping, all three of these forces are constantly interacting, pushing against each other to shape the world we live in today. So I want to leave you with this question to really think about. Are we still being shaped by the echoes of these 30-second gunfights, stolen babies, and atomic bombs today? I mean, when we look at our modern debates over justice, technology, media, and civil rights, the echoes of Tombstone, Tulsa, and Los Alamos are absolutely undeniable. History isn't just something that happened a long time ago, it's something we're actively living right now. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep exploring the history that surrounds us every single day.